Okay, here is the scenario for today. You're about to roll out new password policies to thousands of users in your organization. And you're concerned that once you turn on these new rules, um, many users are going to be affected, meaning they may be forced to change their password immediately, um, or something is going to affect them. So you're in your planning phase. You're thinking about all the different scenarios that you could come across, and you want to make sure that you are planning appropriately and making good choices. All right, so that's the context. Um, I'm Kevin from Spec Ops, and I'm here today to talk about that exact issue. So how do we address that? I was working with someone recently talking about planning and some things they need to take into consideration, and I started really wallowing in this password expiration experience, and I wanted to share some of it. So first off, when your password expires is actually an artifact of a few different things. So if I look at this user object here, Kevin, and I look at the attribute editor, I will see that there is an attribute on all my user objects, all my called PWDlastset. Okay, that PWDlastset is an important bit of data. If the policy that applies to this user says your password, can't be more than 90 days old, it's going to calculate expiration based on the last time the password was set and that expiration or max password age. So the two things sort of come together. Really important. So I want to look at this, of course, from the PowerShell perspective, because we want to make sure that users are going to be in a situation where just because you as the admin change the policy, they're not forced down a path of changing the password immediately. So we want to play with that PWDlastset. It may look nice and easy and pretty in ADUC. It's not. So let's look at it from a PowerShell perspective. I'm going to use one of the great Active Directory commandlets, get AD user. I'll call for an identity, Kevin, that same user. Of course, I can put it in quotes. I want to ask for that property PWDlastset in particular. So even though get AD user Kevin will return me a bunch of good data, it actually will return me a lot more than just that data. If I say format list all, I have some additional data that's in here. I also have a bunch of additional properties that I can get to. But I don't get it all just by asking. I need to get explicit. So I'm going to say get AD user identity Kevin, and then I'm going to say properties PWDlastset. I'm going to ask for it explicitly. So now when I look at this, and you look at the above, you'll see that PWDlastset was just returned. And look at that piece of data there. That's sort of ugly. I'm not sure how anyone could look at that and do a conversion into an actual date, but that is a date and timestamp. You saw it in AD users and computers. This is actually a calculated field. This counts the number of 100 millisecond ticks from January 1st, 1601 until the time that was set. That's a big number. So let's see what that number really means. So imagine I take this information, or I take this get AD user identity Kevin properties PWDlastset, and instead of dumping it to the screen, I shove it into or store it in a variable, in this case user. Let me clear my screen and clean up a bit. So now if I look at the user variable, you see there's my Kevin, and there's PWDlastset. But now I can also do this cool thing. I'm going to say date time. I want to convert information to the date time format from file time this is a method, and I'm going to say user.pwdlastset. Sorry. So call this datetime method from file time and convert this. There's a lot of different stuff we can do with that as far as formatting, but this is the nice, easy output. So you can see now, I can see, Kevin last changed his password February 27th, 2015 at 10:05 with 4 seconds in the morning. Great. Very, very interesting and helpful information. And getting that information is really interesting. Getting it and doing something with it is actually really powerful. So what do I want to do? So the scenario that I presented was, I'm about to change the policy that's going to affect thousands of users. I'm going to say, now you need to reset your passwords every 90 days. Before, it didn't have an expiration. Or before, maybe it was 360 days, once a year, or whatever. Now I'm going to shrink it, which means most of my users are probably going to immediately be out of date. So before I do that, I want to reset the PWDlastset bit. I want to reset it to today, or the day that I execute, so that they aren't bombarded with this initial experience. And as long as that is appropriate for your organization and you know what you're doing, it's going to be a really good technique. What I found in researching this was a lot of different folks have gone down this path, a lot of code, a lot of VB, but in PowerShell, it's actually the simplest way to do it. This bit of data, PWDlastset, it will only take one of two values from you if you manually update it. It will take a 0. So if I go in and find a user, in this case Clara, and I'll say attribute editor, and I'll go to PWDlastset, and there's my ugly number. I'm going to change that to 0. I'm going to say OK and apply. You can see that's set to never. What actually happened when I set it to 0 was this. If I look at the account tab, look at that. User must change password at next login. That is not what I want. I don't want to force the user to change the password at next login. I want to uncheck that, and I want to go back to PWDlastset, and you can see in here that just triggered, just unclicking that, triggered that to change to 9:33 p.m. So I changed it to 0, and then I went and looked, I unchecked the user must change password, and I changed it, and it updated it to now, this moment, now. The other way to do that is you change this value to -1. And -1 will essentially update to now. Now, when you try to automate this or you try to script it, it's a little funky because in one of the scripts I read was sort of funny because he had a comment in his script that said, you do it this way because that's the way Microsoft wants you to do it. And it was sort of funny because it's very confusing to understand why this process is necessary, but what you need to do is you need to set the value to 0, you need to commit that to AD, and then you need to set it to -1, and then commit that to AD. So what that essentially does in that one single motion is going to say, all right, now that password last set has been changed, and it feels like it changed right now. So now you can roll out your new password policy. Okay, so let me move on and show you quickly the tool that I'm starting to build around this. I want to create a little commandlet, a little function that says set password last set. And it's going to take one parameter, username. I can actually take that from a file, so I should be able to feed it multiple usernames. And then it's going to take the username and it's going to pipe that to the for each object commandlet. So it's saying for each object in username, this array, let's set USR to get AD user. The identity is the first item in the pipeline, and get the password last set. And then I have this little write verbose line that does that cool little conversion, that date timestamp conversion. And then I can say, okay, now that you've got that, change it to 0, set it, and now change it to -1, set it. You always update the object locally, then you commit it to the directory, then you update locally, commit to the directory. All right, so let's see how this works. So I'm going to run that. Again, the function is called set PWDlastset. The variable is username, and here I'll put Kevin. And I also support, I'll put verbose here so that we can see the verbose mode stuff. So user Kevin Sullivan last set her password. I guess I have to update my text a little bit. On 2/27/2015, 10:05, the password will now be set to expire the time she next logs into Windows. Isn't that nice? Let me say get AD user, identity, Kevin, properties, PWD last set. I'm going to go back and reset my variable. And then I'm going to do my cool nifty date time. And look at that. Tuesday, March 24th, 2015, 9:36 and 25 seconds p.m. Perfect. So this understanding of how PWDlastset works, the understanding of how to interpret that data, and the understanding of how to set that to something that you have some control over. In this case, set it to now. Really, really helpful. Great for rolling out new password policies and keeping the effect of your end users to a minimum. So enjoy. Hope it was helpful, and come back soon.